around 1910. But the field and the scenery that you see all around here really is about the same way that it was when Harriet Tubman would have been here. That's the uniqueness, of this area, is that it's basically unchanged. So my family has owned the store for, I'm the 4th generation to actually own it. They did not own it when Harriet Tubman would have been struck in the head, but they were big landowners down here at that time. So the store that you see right now, the things that you see here are probably about 1860 Civil War period, because what we know is that the store was here about 1830, something like that, when it was originally built in here. When my great-great-great-grandfather bought it, he renovated it and updated it. So after that point, nothing else has been changed. When my family ended up selling it, and then my wife and I bought it back because it was in a very bad state of disrepair. I mean, it was almost to the point of collapsing. We did not want to see, this historic landmark just go to waste. Have people in here just taking the cabinets and stuff out, and the store be gone. So we bought it. We formed a nonprofit organization called the Bucktown Village Foundation. We worked with the Maryland Historic Trust and Bart True and some other organizations in order to we renovated the store, but what we did not do was to bother the interior of the store, okay? In 1983, the people that owned it at that point, they had sold the store and they were going to move to Cambridge. Well, in 1983, I was about 22 years old. I knew at that point that I wanted to have this store one day, At that point, I did not realize the connection with Harriet Tubman, but I knew the connection with my own family. They had an auction then, so I came down here at that auction, bought some of the stuff that was in here, and just put it in my house and wherever with the hopes that one day I would get the store. In 1997, the store went back on the market again, and my wife and I bought it. So, we had a vision to own the store from early on. Harriet Tubman, she worked out here in these fields that you see, probably the same exact field that you see right now. We know that she was working out here somewhere. There was an overseer. His name was Thomas Brodus. So Thomas Brodus, not a very nice person, as you can imagine, being the local overseer. He took care of a lot of the enslaved people of the area, including Harriet Tubman and the people, that were working in the field that day. There happened to be a young man. We're not sure about his age and, all the information that we have. It's not clear the details, but we know that the event happened because Harriet Tubman said so. It's in Sarah Bradford's book, Kate Larson's book. And what we know, or what we believe happened is that boy came to this store for some reason. We're not quite sure why he would have came to the store. In Dorchester County at that time, there were about 4,000 enslaved people and about 4,000 free African Americans. Dorchester was kind of a split area. Further south, if you were African American, chances are you were enslaved. If you were north, chances are you were free, if you want to use that term free, because even in the north, African Americans were not treated nicely at all. They weren't slaves, but they were the next thing to it. So in Dorchester County, we had both. So the point of that is that we know that the enslaved people and the free people intermingled, they married, they were allowed to work, they were allowed to get money, small amounts. Like Harriet Tubman, she said that she cut wood, to accumulate money and things like that. So whether the young man came to the store to purchase something, whether, he came over here out of curiosity, we're not sure, but we do know that he came here. We also know that Thomas Barnett found out that that young man was at this store. So Harriet Tubman, we know also, knew that Thomas Barnett knew. Okay, now maybe she's seen him coming back in the distance. Maybe the other enslaved people were like, get to work because Barnett's on his way back. We're not sure, but we know that Harriet Tubman sensed and knew that that young boy was going to be in big trouble if he got caught in this store. Being a very young lady that she was, you know, she had a keen sense of things. I mean, we know that from very early on. She came to the store in order to warn this young man of this impending danger. Unfortunately, Barnett got to the store too. You know, maybe she was in the front door, he was in the back door, maybe she was in here trying to get this boy, come on, we gotta go. You know, we're not sure, but Barnett ended up in the store at the same time. Barnett knew that that young man was here and should not be here. We know that because he ordered Harriet Tubman to grab the boy. So the boy knew he wasn't supposed to be here either, and he was probably trying, you know, he's probably like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm caught, and was trying to get away. Barnett ordered Tubman to hold that boy. So Barnett was here for the boy. We also know that Harriet Tubman refused to do that. You know, she refused to grab this young man. We know that Barnett, he grabbed a weight off of the counter. Not this particular weight, but this is a counterweight. So it would have been very similar to this. And we know that he heaved that weight out of anger, right? It didn't hit the boy. We know it hit Harriet Tubman right square in the forehead. Almost killed her. It knocked her out. She bled, you know, almost to the verge of death. They had to come here and get her. They took her home. And over the next weeks, they mended her and got her well again. However, she never fully recovered from that event. It was a terrible blow. It was in the head. So it gave her narcolepsy, or the sleeping disease. So, of course, slaves, you know, they were property, right? They weren't people. They were property. So this property that the Broduses owned, who was the owners of Harriet Tubman, they had this property now that was damaged, you know, because she'd fall off into these sleeping spells. So she wasn't the best, you know, the best property anymore. So what'd they do with her? They gave her the tough, dirty tasks. Like they sent her out in the woods trapping the marshes, right? They sent her with her father, Ben Ross, on the logging crew. They hired her out a lot to other people in the area. But, you know, to me, Harriet Tubman's story is a spiritual thing. Okay,
right.
So that's my belief. It's a total spiritual thing, because I think that God was right here when that event happened. And the reason is because this event, God took that terrible event in her life and used it to benefit people for generations to come. The reason he did that, or the reason I believe that, is because this terrible blow almost killed her, ended up putting her out here in the swamps and the marshes and hiring her out. But he was using that. He was forming and creating the Harriet Tubman that we know. You know, and I tell the story about 100 times a year probably, and I still get goosebumps when I think about it, because it's an amazing story. She learned the swamps and the marshes. She learned how to navigate the waterways. She learned the area. She probably understood a network. You know what I mean? She became braver and stronger and tougher. She probably did not realize this at the time, you know, because she probably thought this is, you know, worse than death.
Right.
But God had it all figured out. You know, He had the ultimate plan in place. So what happens is, in 1848, 1849, Edward Brodus dies, the owner of Harriet Tubman and her entire family. He died. Elizabeth Brodus actually was pretty poor. You know, they lived a very modest lifestyle. Their house was only 20 by 30 feet big. You know, it wasn't a big mansion by any means. It wasn't a big mansion. They were very poor people. So what she had to do is she had to sell the slaves because, you know, she didn't have her husband anymore to make income. Well, they were all family. They didn't want to be sold and broken up, but they knew in the future, because the discussions were taking place, that probably this was going to happen. So Harriet Tubman, in the fall of 1849, she decided that, you know, I'm leaving here. She tried to get her family to go, but the only two that would leave with her were her brothers named Harry and Ben. Harry and Ben and Harriet Tubman, they escaped. Well, Harry and Ben got out here in these marshes and these swamps and the water and the mosquitoes and the flies, and they're like, hey, forget this. I'm going back and suffer the consequences. So Harry and Ben, they came back. Now you can imagine that the conditions had to be incredibly rough if they were willing to go back and suffer not only the potential and the possibility of being sold down to the South, but also to suffer the consequences of escaping and leaving. But they went back, and that, you know, we know that for sure. Harriet Tubman, she did not. She kept on going. She escaped and she got to Canada. Well, when she got to Canada, as we all probably know, she got there and she looks and she's, you know, I'm free, but I'm alone. You know, what is freedom without my family and, you know, the people that I love? So we know that Harriet Tubman, she ended up coming back. And she came back again and again. And she ended up getting Harry and Ben. She got her entire family actually out of here except for one sister who ended up dying before she could get her out of here. You know, they were at the courthouse being sold, and Harriet Tubman went there, you know, was able to help these people escape. And to me, yeah, it's an incredible story. And, you know, here's the thing of it, if you think about it. Now, you got Harriet Tubman in 1849. She's black, okay? She's a woman. She's uneducated. She's about that tall, right? Right, exactly. She's got this debilitating injury, you know? Everything in the world you could think that a person could have going against them at that time. But yet, look what she was able to do with all of these huge diversities. You know what I mean? She was able to accomplish things that nobody else could accomplish. She was able to do that because she was a great person. She was able to do that because God had His hand right upon her from the day that she was born. You know what I mean? I mean, God knows us before we're even created. He knew Harriet Tubman, you know, and He had that perfect plan for her. And, you know, that in itself is incredible. I don't care who you are, you know. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what side of history that you think that you might be on. But when you talk about Harriet Tubman, I don't care. You have to admire that person.